All right, we are recording.
All right, and we're at noon, by the way.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So, so why don't we go ahead and get things started? I'll get the party started and hand it over to you and Dawn. How's that sound?
Sounds wonderful.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to. Gosh, is this where are we at? About midway through our webinar series, and actually it's our virtual sessions, DOYO Live virtual sessions. And I am really stoked, really excited about today's webinar for multiple reasons. I actually am taking a break from a little bit of a snowboard day. I got my good friend Becky Bertuzzi, longtime creative director at DOYO Live, owner of B Squared Graphcis, and she came to me with a client of hers that we actually were going to have on as an in-person speaker this year, obviously at DOYO, but we all know the outcome of that. But I am very excited to tell you as well that we will be back in 2021 in October-ish, November for an in-person event. I don't know the size of that yet, but stay tuned for that. And anyway, we found Don Ritenour from Yo Fresh Foods. He got involved in DOYO and coming to some of our networking events with icons of Youngstown. I was very excited because I wanted to have him be a speaker at our in-person event. So obviously we wanted to continue on with that with our virtual event. If you can see the screen, which you probably have a video share of Becky and Dawn, do me a favor, raise your hand. Let us know that you're out there. So that would be the first thing. Donnie, Mike, Lauren, thank you for dropping on by today. Again, if you could raise your hand, that gives us some idea. Thank you, Mike. You win a prize there for raising the hand, so appreciate it. Becky, are we streaming on Facebook as well?
We are not streaming on Facebook because I don't have the permission to do so, Dennis.
but we are recording. So needless to say, with no further ado, since things are working, I am going to bow out here, pass things over to Becky and Dawn. Thank you all for being part of the DOYO Live community. And Becky, take it away. It's all yours.
Sweet. Thanks, Dennis. Have fun shredding. I'm super jealous. Usually I'm the one that goes out and snowboards, and Dennis is the one telling me I'm so jealous, but how the tables have turned. Well, welcome everybody. As Dennis said, my name is Becky Bertuzzi. I'm the owner of B Squared Digital and Design. And I'm also the creative director at DOYO when we have an in-person conference. And I'm hoping that we get back to that very soon. But like Dennis said, today's webinar guest is Don Ritenour from Yo Fresh. And I've been working with Don and his wife, Caroline, for over a year now. I've been handling all of their social media content scheduling and things like that. So I've really gotten to know Don pretty well over the last year. I've known Caroline since I've been 15 because Caroline and I used to swim together. So I'm really excited to kind of sit down and interview Don so everybody can kind of understand where he's come from in terms of the business and in terms of the marketing mind. That was one of the big things that Don told me. He goes, I don't understand this. And I think he didn't understand it. And then he didn't see the value in it. And in going to DOYO, he was actually able to see how important having a solid social media strategy with a solid brand can really help grow your business. And I mean, they've done nothing but explode in terms of growth over the last year and a half. So that's been really fun to be a part of. But welcome, Don.
Hi, thanks for having us out today. Again, Becky, thanks for joining us. Dennis out there getting some ski time in, so that's good. Glad he's enjoying himself today. And so shout out and thank you to him too. Again, just for being here. It's quite an honor.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. Talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Yo Fresh first, and really how Yo Fresh started.
Sure. Yo Fresh really got started off of a side hustle at the time. I was working a full-time job, and Caroline's need for some gluten-free meal prep options for her to eat conveniently on the go as busy as she was. We kind of got started there with the idea. I believe you helped with our first logo for that. Actually, it was a birthday gift from Caroline before we even had the thought of a business, the DR Culinary logo that you made for us. So we had a logo. We took a $100 bill. Caroline set up an LLC. We ordered some boxes on the internet from Amazon. We made a Facebook post, and we kind of got the ball rolling from there. A lot of our original customers were actually swim clients that Caroline had and people she knew as we got started. So again, it was really just an idea and a thought, and really just providing a service, again, that my wife needed. So once we got to that point, we were like, if I have to make 10 meals, then I might as well make 20 or 30 at the same time. And it was really just started with the Facebook post. So it's kind of crazy to think about the progress, how we've changed and grown over the last couple of years as an idea, as maybe a side hustle, to an actual full-blown business that's operating and doing good in the community.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really just came from, in the beginning, it was really just word of mouth. And I think a lot of small businesses have that. They get started and it's friends and friends of friends that are supporting the small business. And then I think at some point there becomes a need to do a little bit more to grow the business.
Right. That's kind of how we got started. Again, it was about another year into that. We brought on business partners, some local gym owners, and we brought on Laura Zabadil. She was our registered dietitian, and she's the owner of Mega Bar Youngstown. So again, it was getting the people in position and getting help to get the ball rolling. We used fitness and a lot of local gyms to start to get the ball rolling and to find a niche for Yo Fresh. It was really in the beginning.
Yeah. So that first year or so, you're building the brand, but you guys have the tagline, eat good, feel good, do good. And that's pretty central to the Yo Fresh brand. I don't know if everyone on the webinar is aware, but they have a buy 10 give 12 program where if you purchase 10 meals, they donate 12 to the Second Harvest Food Bank. So I know that's really important to the Yo Fresh values. Can you just talk a little bit about that and why that's so important?
Sure. It goes back, we went to the YBI and there was an entrepreneur class, and they were talking about Tom's shoes and how buy a pair, give a pair. And this was early on in just the idea process of Yo Fresh. And I thought, wow, that would be a great concept. How can we tie in food with the same kind of concept? And I was familiar with Second Harvest Food Bank and what they did locally. We kind of reached out to them, and it was a natural fit, again, to be able to provide meals and then be able to take some of that and provide meals to the less fortunate or those in need, especially during these times. So it was part of a natural fit. And as we did that, that's kind of after that, we came up with the eat good, feel good, do good as like as a tag slogan. But again, it goes to the whole process of eat good, feel good, do good. I think if we all could start there in our lives, we'd be able to see a bigger impact and change, not only in ourselves and our immediate around us, but in the community as well. If everybody would kind of buy into what we got going on here. Again, we're not just selling food to sell food. We're selling food to maybe help you eat healthier, to help you eat more convenient without getting fast food, healthier options to eat on the go, to give back with the community. So it's all a bigger picture of what we want to do. We didn't want to just be a business to sell food. We wanted to build something that could leave an impact and maybe even change the thought process for not only adults, but now as youth and school children as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that having that story and exactly what you said, you're not just a company that sells food, like you're a company that's helping people make better choices and making those healthier choices a little bit more affordable. And that's something that I think when you're looking at your brand overall, and not just for you, but just any other company, that does a really good job of humanizing it. And you've got some story behind it to tell as to what your why is for the business. Because I think sometimes people think, well, their why for the business is to make as much money as humanly possible. And that's not necessarily the case in all instances. And in your instance, it's to get healthier food to more people and to show them that, eating healthy doesn't have to break their bank.
Sure. We even just this week, I noticed there was a statistic on childhood obesity, and it's up around 20%. Growing up in our generation, we got bombarded a lot with the Saturday morning cartoon propaganda, I guess I'll say. and there was a lot of snacks and sugary, Kool-Aid guys and cookies and I don't know, Twix and candy bar commercials. So that was part of how I sometimes still tend to eat at times, because of that mindset and growing up and seeing it. So again, I just want to be able to try to change some thought process. And again, it's leading to health issues of adults, childhood obesity, adult obesity. We're overwhelming the healthcare with diabetes and heart issues. And these are all things that can be regularly maintained by diet and actually what we're consuming and what we're putting into our bodies.
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said before, you've grown pretty quickly. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know that, while you're growing, and I've kind of had a front row seat to this, but I mean, it's been a struggle. Growth is good, but growth is also very hard, especially when you spend almost 24/7 with your wife, who's
Yeah,
also
we'll
part
talk
of the
about that
business.
with COVID. Yeah, that's been part of the process and part of the growth. It's been very challenging for me on multiple levels. One, accepting the fact that we're here, we're actually doing this. Sometimes it's surreal, to even again to have this opportunity to be here and share our story and who we are, what we're doing in the community, and some of the struggles that we have and things that we've learned. Um, so that's part of it too. But some of the struggles again with growth, learning that it's a constant state of growth, and that's how we get better. Most of my life, even in the early adulthood, I would kind of just maintain at an average level to succeed enough. And, that would be it. So once I would get to a point, then you can kind of turn it off, once you kind of got to where you needed to go, you can go to cruise control. Where this is totally different. It's a constant change. It's a constant evolve. It's never the same each day. And the time strain, for me, has been a total challenge. I mentioned even my wife Caroline yesterday. She's a huge supporter through all this and kind of pushed me out of the airplane in the beginning. And that's been part of the process too, and the growth. But for me, it's been scheduling and stuff. There was a time when my days were pretty well, go to work, and that was all I had on my schedule. So I didn't have to really plan so much and schedule and write stuff down and keep track of stuff in my phone and different apps. But now that we're actually doing this stuff, and it seems to be almost daily that I'm having different opportunities and meetings and people to speak to and engagements to attend. So it's managing all of that, for me, has been a lot of the issue. The cooking part's always been, easy, but being an entrepreneur and not just being an employee has been a part of the struggle. Learning to communicate with different people on different levels. My wife being one of them. Again, not being able to take, work stuff home sometimes, because not only are we working together on a business and we're locked down during COVID, but at the time, we didn't have this space, and we were literally with each other 24/7 for months. So it was definitely wearing at times on both of us. We were able to see a lot of the true sides of each other that maybe we missed. We weren't really working together on the same page. She would have some of her struggles, and I would have mine, but sometimes we didn't get to see that one-on-one. So that's been a really part of the struggle, not so much of the business side of it and the food and the operations, but the internal stuff, the emotional stuff, the depression stuff, the communication stuff, trying again. Most marriages, I believe 50% end up in a divorce, and 50% of businesses don't make it. So I'm trying to do both with my wife during COVID and lockdown. So it's been quite interesting. I said, I know there's times that she's wanted to choke me, I'm sure. And sometimes even likewise, with the frustration and the day-to-day mundane task of work, balancing schedules. We both have ADD, ADHD, and sometimes it doesn't work the same for each of us. She'll be in her perfect little space to work, and I'll come barging in and interrupt her at times, or likewise. So it's really just been part of that. It's been the internal stuff. It's been the struggle for the growth. The business side of the growth has kind of been easy. We were kind of pre-COVID ready. If you think about it, we basically had contactless delivery from the beginning with YoFresh. You would know as well, there were times you would be home and before COVID, you'd see the cooler outside and we would drop your meals off. So that stuff kind of fit into where we were already headed. Even the hot and ready meals on Wednesdays, we went through that during that transition of COVID. The meal prep too, people weren't wanting to go out, people weren't wanting to go to the grocery store. So it was a natural fit for us to grow during that season of COVID, actually.
Yeah, I think the big thing that people think with entrepreneurs is, yes, you're very good at one thing, but there's multiple other things that you have to be good at or be cognizant of. And it can be extremely, extremely wearing at times if you just
overwhelming,
aren't good at it.
Burdens, very stressful, all those words. But for us, falling into your questions here, for us, again, it was knowing what we were good at and utilizing our strengths. My wife was very good at problem solving. I'm pretty fluid in the kitchen. We have you helped do our social media. Again, that's your strength. And we've brought people on board and we've asked the right questions to the right people to help get us there. And it's knowing that there are times that you have to wear multiple hats, but you can't wear a hat that doesn't fit you very long and be successful. At some point in time, you have to find someone to wear that hat that fits that role, that's their gift, that's their talent, that's their strength. Because that's part of how we're trying to build YoFresh too, is putting people's strengths first and using that, and how can we use their strengths and make them valuable and an asset to the company, not just as an employee, but as a person. So if I didn't like to cook and I like to be in the kitchen all day, but that was my job at the time, then is that really the best fit for me? Probably not. Just like Caroline, there were many times we tried to have Caroline in the kitchen to help me, and it never really worked out so well. Most of the times it was arguments and tears. Mostly her tears and I guess me being argumentative. But so again, it's knowing that puzzle piece doesn't fit, and it's finding the right pieces and building the right team. There was a good quote I seen not that long ago, was like, build a team so where you can't really tell who the boss is. And that's really important, I think, for us and what we've done and how we've got to this point, is really finding the right people. Again, I can use Laura, for example. Like, I know how to make food taste good. I know how to cook food. I can prep food. I can chop vegetables with the best of them, but I really don't know nutrition. So it was either take the time to learn that aspect or find somebody that already had that talent. And we were able to find somebody with that talent, bring her on board and use her, part of her talent as an asset for our company, to fill that gap. Because again, if I wanted to take the time to go learn about the nutrition, then what would that have taken away from our startup time? And would we be where we're at today if I tried to wear that hat? So all things to take into consideration. Like I said, I understand at the beginning that there's a lot of hats to wear. You're cleaning floors, you're taking out trash, you're doing the billing, the payroll, the tax, the social media, and it's a lot. And again, there was a time that we were at that point. We tried to wear all the hats, but knowing that, again, some of those hats didn't fit us, and find the people that could wear that hat and do that well.
Was that a hard decision for you guys to make, to get to that point, to realize where we are wearing all of these hats and we really can't? I mean, you could, but you knew that if you did, the growth wouldn't be there and the brand that we see today wouldn't be there. Was that something that was an easy decision to make, because it's your baby, and you want to take care of your baby, but on the other hand, you knew, you can't wear all the hats.
Right. Again, so with us, we've been very fortunate. We've had the right people in the right place at the right time. Some of our employees have been with us from the beginning. There's a few that have been around from the start. But again, as starting a small business, we didn't want to bring on employees that we couldn't handle and sustain. So all of our employees in the beginning had other jobs. So that was part of it. It was definitely hard to get to the point to where, for me, trust, right? We could talk about that real stuff too. Trust is hard, especially as a person, let alone as a business owner. Like you said, it's like trying to find the perfect babysitter, right? I'm sure like that's not always easy. But that was the hard part, was the trust. But again, it was knowing that there were other people, again, out there to help bring us bring on board with us to help us get to that stage of being able to grow. Again, if I still tried to maintain every little piece and Caroline was micromanaging everything, then we wouldn't have had time to reach out and do some of the projects and connections that we've made. So it's definitely important to know when that time is, but there was a time we couldn't afford that either. There's times we trade services and trade food and stuff like that for services and for photography and things like that, because in the beginning, again, the finances weren't always there. But it was maintaining and the right stewardship in the beginning of the assets and the money, and doing it the right way with the help of Caroline. Because again, I drug my feet on a lot of that process too. I'm like, hey, it's my money, I'll do what I want. Like that commercial, right? My money, I want it now. But again, that's not how it works. But that was part of it. Again, getting the right people in the right place, and it's not easy. But we didn't just hire anybody. We brought people that we knew, people that had relationships with, people that Caroline had relationships with, and people that have had built relationships in the community that we could look at and see who these people were, what they were about, and the kind of people they are, and what they stood for as owners of a business and as people. And choosing that way, very important too. Not always so much as maybe the quickest or the person with the most flash or the best resume. Doesn't always work out. Sometimes it's the overlooked gem, right, that you stumble across, and they're a perfect fit into the puzzle.
Yeah, I think for sure, especially when you're starting out, you want to make sure that you've got people on your team whose, values and intentions align with yours. And I think that you guys have done a phenomenal job of doing that. And, you touched on it. It was, people, you brought people in that you knew or that Caroline knew. And, what's that like having people that either work for YoFresh directly or somehow involved that you can reach out to and, bounce ideas off of, because I know that you attended YoFresh, you made some connections. We know a lot of the same people in the community. How important is that? Because I mean, we talk about networking all the time, and networking looks a little bit different now, but just how important it is to go out there and meet with like-minded people.
Very, very important. I had no idea the value that it really has. But really with the Youngstown mindset, knowing that everybody knows somebody that knows you kind of mentality, I always knew it was important. And it was part of building a business and a brand that you had to have that good community connection, a strong word of mouth. You had to be who you were in Youngstown. Because again, bad news travels fast, sometimes more than good news. So if you get out there and you're not doing the right thing and you're making people angry, or you're overcharging for a product, it's not going to work. But the networking was very huge. It started for me, I guess, at DOYO meeting, coming to the studio last year. I sat in with Deanna Hines and Deanna Facilia.
Hines, her married name's Hines.
Yeah, that's right.
And
so,
sorry if I screwed that up.
Right. So that was my first introduction to networking and marketing at DOYO last year. So through even just that initial conference, again, that was the first one I actually attended as an entrepreneur, even as an adult, I would say it's like the first business conference I've kind of attended. But I was able to meet a few people there, Deanna, Steve Cross, Dennis Schiraldi, just to name a few. And that kind of opened up the door for me to even go out on my own. There was a local gentleman, Simon Aries, who has a Facebook podcast. I reached out to him. Again, he became more of a business mentor too along the way. Again, read these books, here's this checklist, how to be a more entrepreneur, get up early if you have to. Sometimes you got to cut some sleep out, stuff like that. But networking is very big. As I look here, even I put some little notes here. Again, like Dennis Schiraldi, Steve Cross, yourself, Deanna, Laura Zabadil, Ben Ritenour from Libs, Plant Love, NASH bar for local, Alta Head Start, Potential Development, the YWCA, Inspiring Minds Youngstown, the Youngstown Business Incubator, the Kitchen Incubator in Youngstown, Branch Street, and the United Way. Those are a few of the local connections that we've been able to make in a short time through networking. And it's really sometimes just putting yourself out there and reaching out to somebody that you might not be comfortable with, but it ties in, like we said earlier, it's putting the right people in the right position and knowing your strengths and weaknesses. So again, I knew my strengths, but I also knew some of my weaknesses, but that's where the networking comes into, because everybody has a talent and a strength and something to bring to the table. So if you just sit at your own table the whole time and just try to feed yourself, it's never really gonna, it's always beneficial to have the multitude of people around you to use their own talent to get you to where you need to be. Because again, it's that community and the networking that really matters. At the end of the day, I'm not just selling food, I'm selling, myself, I'm selling my story, I'm selling the whole package of what we're doing in the community. Because again, there's so many great places to eat and get food at in town, but it goes back to the why. So I think that's kind of maybe even what separates us from some of the other things is our why. But the networking has been a huge, huge part of it, and just realizing again, like that's really what makes the success story successful.
Yeah. Yeah, let's circle back to you attending DOYO, and the only reason I asked this is because I know you, and but how eye-opening was it to like really understand the importance of marketing and branding and putting yourself out there on social media and being consistent with it?
Yeah, those are things that I still struggle with. It's part of those hats we talked about earlier. That's not one of my best fitting hats. Is staying on task in the kitchen and taking pictures for social media and stuff. But knowing that it's important is part of the process. For me, it was eye-opening because again, I came in and sat down and basically everybody was speaking in Mandarin, right? I had no idea. I didn't understand marketing, SEOs, back end, like none of that stuff. Geofencing was one of the things we learned about. Like there was just so many different things that I had no clue how any of it worked and how it even why social media, like what's that even have to do with a business? Like I'm a yellow pages kind of guy, I guess. Showing my age there. Sometimes I give my web address with www.com in front of it, so that also tells you my age at times. But it was learning that too, like knowing that there's that gap, and it goes back to knowing my strengths and weaknesses. There was a whole space of marketing and advertising and a way to reach people that I just really didn't know anything about. So getting there, meeting with Deanna, talking to you, lining up with Steve Cross at iSynergy, and starting to put these pieces together. Now I have somewhat of an idea how it actually works. I can look at some stuff and track some numbers on Facebook. I can follow some trends. I know a little bit about how the marketing ends work and some of the pieces tie together. I don't know it all and don't want to, but I do know that it's important, right? Which is the main thing, knowing that it was not just for teenagers on Snapchat, social media, just to connect, but it's actually a platform for business use and to promote, not just your business, but even as a person. So very, very important.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the coolest thing to watch you go to DOYO and then like have that light bulb turn on, and I'm like, oh, look at this, look at our little boy, he's doing so well. But no, I think
it's still the same way. Like I still feel like that sometimes too. Like wow, I'm growing up so fast. A lot sometimes. Like wow, like but I have a good quote here I wrote down too. Like if you say if they ask you, hey, do you know such and such? And you're like, yeah, but you really don't know it. But you say that because you want to just feel like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. You'll never really know. Like you'll never get that information. So it's knowing your strengths and weaknesses too, and knowing that there's a lot out there that is out of my ballpark, that's out of my realm, that's not in my comfort zone. But also knowing when to dabble into that, right? How to push into the comfort zone a little bit, because that unlocks some things sometimes too.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be an expert at it, but if you've got the basic understanding and you know that you don't want to be an expert at it, or you just don't have the bandwidth to be the expert at it, really reaching out to somebody that knows how to do that is huge. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, is they think that they have to know everything about everything. And they don't. You can reach out to people who are the subject matter expert in whatever you're trying to learn, and leverage their knowledge. You know, that's probably, for me personally, just as you know, as I grow through my career and my business, is reaching out to people who know more things than you do, because
Sure.
it's going to take them less time to do something for you or explain something to you that you might not understand.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's 100% knowing, and like we said, knowing when to ask for help, and having those right people in your space. Let's switch over to Dawn, the chef. So how did you get started with cooking?
Yeah, cooking. It was really quite simple. My mom was a server at a restaurant, and they had a banquet center, and it was about time, you know, just getting 16 and wanting to get a car and stuff like that. So it was like, hey, you know, you go wash dishes, and that was the start of it. I guess that was the beginning. Being at like a catering hall and that stuff too, you got to see a little bit of everything. Most of the time you went to work, it was a party or an event, which was always cool to me because you were there making memories for somebody. Um, they might not remember everything, but there'd probably be something about the night they possibly remembered. Like, you know, maybe it was the food or a song or just building memories. Was always kind of important. I was also fortunate enough that my best friend's dad owned a restaurant coming up when I was around 20 years old. We got quite a few years in there, but we really had not a clue. If I look back on some of the stuff that we did, we just didn't know any better. But the place burnt down, so that was kind of a bummer. And that was where I ventured out, and I actually got aligned with some chefs, and really went from a short order line cook into a different realm of fine dining, and then in the country club dining and stuff like that. It was something that was always there. I went to school to be a machinist. I was in the Army for telecommunications. Both things probably would have paid a lot more than my cooking job has for most of my adult life. But it was never like work. It was always fun. It was the ADD part too, ADHD in the environment, right? It's always noisy. There's 100 things going on. Machines printing out checks. People are carrying on conversations. The sound of food, pots and pans banging around, like that energy always did something for me. It's also the adrenaline coming to find out again as I get older. Like my brain really liked that Friday night dinner rush, yeah, middle of a crap show, right? Like poop it in a fan kind of deal. Like that's where I thrive sometimes. Uh, but again, it's not something I went to culinary school for. I kind of took a journeyman type atmosphere. I would go to a local place and work under some chefs. I would normally, you know, get to the highest level I could at that job uh, without becoming the chef of the place. And then I would try to maybe usually go somewhere else and try to work under somebody else and learn what they had. And that's really been the cool part about why I like to do this too, because it's always in the back of my mind is as a chef, if I make a dish, you can't tell me I'm wrong because that's the way I made it. So that probably played into a little bit of it too, as the need to have instant gratification and knowing at the end of the day, like that's why I wanted it. I had the final say. So those were all things that kind of tied into my culinary career and which got me here. But again, it was also a gift. Um, it's a talent, not something I really have to work at. How I was made, what I was meant to do, right? When you find your gift and you find your talent, you kind of just what you're supposed to do. And that's just where I was. I kind of knew early on. I remember my dad kind of giving me a hard time sometimes, growing up as an adolescent, teenager, like, what are you going to do? You're going to make French fries your whole life? And at the time, I was like, well, I hope not, but maybe, you know, I don't know. But we found our way, you know, and it wasn't always easy. And there was a lot of people along the way that told me no, or, you know, what am I doing? And I can't do it this way, and I got to do it that way. But we've made our own way.
And like having people tell you no, I mean, obviously you work through it and you almost want to prove them wrong, but having that happen, I mean, for anybody, does it kind of give you a little bit of, you know, not negativity, but like maybe a little bit of pause, like, can I really do this? Is this really, you know, what I'm supposed to be doing? Did it affect you any that way?
Oh, right. There's days when it's fuel, and then there's days when it's a heavy burden. And I guess that's part of the game we play. At least that's where my mind comes into play. Some days it is. Some days it's like, oh yeah, I can't. I'll show you. But some days that voice is like, you can't. And then some days you almost hear it. You're like, maybe they're right. Maybe I can't. You know, what am I doing here? Who am I trying to prove? Right. We'll touch on some of my past here a little bit, but that's been part of it too for me. Overcoming a lot of that negativity, that negative mindset. I've overcome a lot of struggles and stuff in my own personal life. But some of them being that I learned a little bit different in school. Again, non-diagnosed ADHD. So all those challenges, really, a lot of my life I've had that where I, didn't fit. I had a hard time learning. I couldn't get the right grades. Studying was hard for me. But I've always, I guess it depends on the day though. Some days I still struggle. Some days the voice is louder than the others. But I try to keep it in perspective. I try to, Caroline's helped me with getting lists and charts of like success, wins and stuff on paper on the walls. And a lot of times too, it's just really thinking of the process. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy. Hard things are hard for a reason. I think Jim Trestle said, greatness is exhausting, and it is. But that's what separates the dudes and adults. And again, there's some days that I don't, but mostly every day I get up, I at least try to do. But some days are harder than others, for sure. It depends on the day. But at the end of the day, it's getting up the next day and getting after it no matter what, even if you're down for a day or two. But it's changed too, knowing now that I'm growing. And again, those voices sometimes aren't as frequent. I'll still hear them every once in a while, but it's not the everyday, like, who you trying to kid? Because most days I get up, I'm like, wow, I'm on top of my game. Let's go get it.
Don, you're muted for me, buddy.
Okay, I lost my Bluetooth there.
Oh, no worries. We're back.
Are we good now?
We're good.
Oh yeah, you can't hear.
A little technical difficulties.
Okay, now we're good. Now we got another earbud in here.
Okay. Don't you hate it when the battery dies?
I thought about charging it too, and I was like, oh, I'm good.
So yeah, we were talking about that negative voice that you can get sometimes as an entrepreneur when you're sitting there and you're just like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't, and I think everybody has those days where that little voice just someday, and you're right, some days it just gets louder than others. But
some days it's a moment, right? Some days it'll get up and I'll be on top of the world, and then by 11 o'clock I'm like, oh, why have I been doing this today, right? Like, who am I trying to kid? And then by 1 o'clock we're kicking in the butt and getting back after it again.
Is that like that ebb and flow? Is that typical of like a food thing, like where you're like 1 minute like everything's good, and the next minute you're like, oh no?
Yeah, it happens. You were pretty flexible. You have to think on your feet a lot. Again, some days the day's going along perfectly smooth, and all of a sudden, boom, it gets a mess. But that's the cool thing about rebounding from it, taking every thought captive kind of deal. Knowing that, okay, this is a bad situation. What Caroline taught me is that a 1 or is it a 10? Because most of the time, me being me, everything was a 10, at least for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's really a 2, but it's a 10 for good 5 minutes. And realizing that too, and being able to look at the situation and go, really, how severe of an issue is this? And is it really a 1 or a 10? That's helped out a lot too.
So we've talked about your struggles with, getting YoFresh off the ground and some of the struggles that you still have every day. But I mean, you in your personal life, you've also had struggles that you've had to overcome too. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that translates into growing a business and being successful at it?
Yeah. Not that long ago, just a couple of years ago, I have actually made a little start here because some bad mistakes. But we'll go back to 2014 was one of the main catalysts in my life. I lost my mom to a doctor-prescribed overdose. They basically put her to sleep with a couple different medications. So up until that point, I myself was using opiate medication for years, just to get through my days. Looking back, I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD yet. I wasn't diagnosed with depression. I was in full-blown addiction, and I also deal with being dyslexic, which is also undiagnosed. So 2014, mom passes away, and my life spiraled for about a year. November 2015, I made a choice to go to a year-long rehabilitation program that I was able to leave if I wanted to, any day of the week, which was really hard because it was in Youngstown. A lot of people were court ordered there, but I could literally see my dad's house from my window. So I would get up some days, look out the window, and just really want to leave. At the time, I was going to save a marriage that didn't work out. Halfway through the program, I went through a divorce. And that was a really changing point too, because it wasn't about anybody else at that point. It was about me. I wasn't proving it for anybody. I wasn't there for anybody else. I really, at that point, knew if I didn't do something at this point, my life probably wouldn't last much longer. So that was kind of the start of it. 2015, we go to rehab, spend a year there. We get out in 2016, around December. 2015 December. So I get out. I found my wife on the website, Tinder, actually.
I guess that's how the kids are doing it these days.
I suppose, right? I suppose. But I met Caroline. I was working at a job that I had before I went into rehab. But I found out that through that process that my job, where I worked, where I went 50 to 60 hours a week, was part of my people, place, and thing. And there were days that I would go to work and I would win. I would battle that demon. And there were days I'd go to work and I'd lose. Most days I won, but the fact that there were some of those days that I was flipping up and using medication and using opiates was a very slippery slope. Caroline actually seen it before I did. And that's when we had a choice together as a couple. We went and got tacos at Lid's coffee shop in Salem. And I met Ben Ritenour. We had a conversation. We talked about a pop-up and some different collaborations. And before you know it, it was time to take a jump and quit my comfy, cozy job that I had that I've worked so hard to get to. Come leave it and take a chance and get out there on my own with Ben and try to make some tacos in a little coffee shop. That's where I kind of found myself again as a person, as a chef. I was able to connect and find some of my own value, I suppose, on my own. A lot of my life, I was the number 2 or number 3 in command in kitchen. So I didn't always understand that I was the number 1 and that I could lead. Well, because nobody ever told me really that I could, looking back. And it was just not in my wheelhouse, at the time. But getting the bends and getting my feet there was a really good start to get my confidence, to see that there was other things out there. Again, there was a guy that was a little bit younger than me, managing a family, being an entrepreneur, having a business, and making a go at it. So it was kind of even that was catalyst for me to see that and go, I think I can do something. I don't have to be restricted just because, again, I didn't go to college. I don't have a degree, right? I battled depression and addiction, all these other words I put on myself that would keep me small for many, many years. That even now, through this process, that we're breaking off and changing my own mindset of myself, like we talked about earlier. But that's really, again, it was part of it. It's coming from depression, addiction, and again, not being the smartest or going to college or maybe having a business degree. Because before we got to this point, some of you watching, I'm sure, probably wouldn't have thought that. The guy sitting here was pretty much overdosing just a few years ago on opiates. But, that's part of it. There's people who need to hear that. I think even as men, we don't talk about depression, anxiety, and fear enough. But it's part of the process. It's part of the journey. It's part of the growth. Days are hard. Some days are easy. But there's always that growth, that up, the grit, right? It's still part of it. It's still part of me. It still makes me who I am. Some days it's easier because of that to look back and go, okay, I've overcome this, and I came from that, and I really shouldn't even probably have a seat at this table today, but here I am on this platform, getting to talk to you and share today. Sometimes it blows my mind, but that's just how faith and opportunity and hard work show up.
Yeah, and I mean, you said, grit. I think that's probably like somebody that, because you and I mean, we grew up here. That's just like, I don't know what it is about people from like Youngstown in the Mahoning Valley, but they don't like, I think there's a t-shirt, Youngstown Clothing Co., Youngstown Event and Grit. Like, we just know how to hustle and keep hustling and keep moving and, keep grinding through stuff, even though it's not the prettiest or the easiest thing to do. But I think that, you see all these businesses on social media and they're showing you the triumphs and they're showing you the pretty stuff. They're not showing you the behind the scenes ugly stuff. And
for me, that was part of my learning experience. That I thought once you had a business and whatever, you got a little sign, a business card, that's the business coming in, like life was easy. But it's really not. Yeah, it's a lot more to it than just collecting a paycheck. There's responsibilities with employees and making sure other people are fed first. Having a job with a paycheck's easy. You go to work, get a paycheck. Own a business, sometimes you got to pay those paychecks first. You're like, there ain't enough for me to eat this week. Good thing we have some food left over. No, it's definitely been that bad. We've been quite blessed with opportunity in the process. Definitely growing every day. It's never getting settled in. Even for our year, our word for this year was settled. Yeah, settling in. Stability is the word. And even that word, so far this year, it's not what I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Stability, when I said it, I had a vision of what it was going to look like. But it's looking like it's going to be a long-term stability. So there's going to be a whole bunch of changes still in the middle and a whole lot more work. But that's part of the process. If you don't grow, right, if you're not changing, if you're not adapting, you're just going to get passed by eventually. Being able to adapt has been crucial this past couple of years.
Don, you're muted again.
Now we're just talking again? Okay.
Now I can hear you.
But it was part of that process of being able to adapt, not being so narrow-minded, and being able to different opportunities that maybe normally we wouldn't have wanted to, but because of COVID and lack of maybe of other opportunities and being unsure of life in general at the time with everything going on, that we took a couple of chances and maybe did some things outside of our comfort zone that now looking back has been really beneficial and with us moving forward.
That's awesome, Don. Thank you. to everybody on the call, we're going to open it up for some questions if you want. And while you guys are typing, Dawn, where can everybody order your delicious, delicious food?
Sure. You can check us out at yofreshfood.com. Social media, Instagram, all that good stuff.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Instagram handle is at YoFresh. But yeah, thanks so much, Dawn. It was great. Again, as Dennis said, we're hoping for an in-person conference for DOYO Live, October, November. If you've been to the conference before, you know, I mean, we get top-notch talent to come in and talk everything marketing, content marketing, social media strategy, digital marketing. And I'm sure that the 2021 conference will be no different. So if you haven't been to the conference, I would highly suggest checking it out. Keep checking out these webinars. Dennis puts out great content. And thanks for spending your lunch hour with us, everybody. Dawn, thank you again.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate it.
All right. See you guys.